It was a crisp November evening, the kind that bites with a cold wind and the scent of dead leaves. I was heading towards my girlfriend's family home for Thanksgiving dinner, a ritual I was new to. The GPS announced my arrival at the destination. Each step I took up the path to the front door felt heavier than the last. A wave of cold air hit me as the door swung open and I was met with the sickly sweet aroma of incense. I tried to shake off the feeling of unease, but it was like an unwelcome guest that refused to leave. "Darling, you made it." Sarah's voice cut through the suffocating quiet. Her touch, however, was familiar and warm, a flicker of normalcy in this increasingly strange environment. The air was thick with unspoken tension, the silence broken only by the soft creak of floorboards beneath our feet. We finally reached a spacious living room dominated by a roaring fireplace that did little to dispel the gloom. The room was crammed with an eclectic collection of objects, animal skulls mounted on the walls, ancient tomes bound in leather, and strangely shaped artifacts displayed in glass cases. A low chuckle escaped her lips, the sound like dry leaves rustling in the wind. Yes, we've been expecting you," she said, her voice a raspy whisper that seemed to cling to the smoke rising from the fireplace. Above the fireplace, a large portrait dominated the wall, depicting a family from a bygone era. This house, this family, held secrets. The grandfather clock chimed 7 times, its deep, resonant tones breaking the oppressive silence. Sarah took my hand, her touch a stark contrast to the icy grip of her mother. We reached a grand dining room, the table set for a feast. The aroma, however, was not of cooked meat. Sarah's father sat at the head of the table, his face hidden in the shadows cast by a flickering candelabra. The meal began in silence, broken only by the clinking of silverware and the occasional grunt from Sarah's father. I tried to focus on my food, but the aroma, the texture, the taste, it was all wrong. The room seemed to close in on me, the air thick with unspoken tension.
I really wasn't sure.
As the dinner progressed, the conversation remained strained. Desperate for a moment of respite, I excused myself from the table, claiming the need for fresh air. Against my better judgment, I descended the stairs, each step echoing ominously in the silence. Driven by a morbid curiosity and a growing sense of dread, I slowly pushed the heavy wooden door open. The sight that greeted me sent a wave of nausea crashing over me. Standing over him, her back to me, was Sarah. For a moment our eyes met, and I saw a flicker of recognition in their depths, followed by something else entirely. Time seemed to stop. Sarah stared at me, her eyes wide, the scalpel still clutched in her blood-stained hand. "Sarah." My voice was a choked whisper, barely audible in the stillness of the basement. "You weren't supposed to see this," she said, her voice cold, devoid of the warmth I knew. "Sarah, what is this?" I stammered, my voice trembling. A humorless laugh escaped her lips, a chilling sound that echoed in the confined space. This family, Sarah's family, were monsters. "Don't be afraid," she said softly, her voice a seductive purr that did nothing to calm the terror clawing at my throat. A shadow fell across the doorway, and a deep, chilling voice cut through the room. "Sarah, what's taking so long?" Sarah's father stepped into the room, his face contorted into a mask of annoyance. This was a scene from a horror film, a nightmare I would wake up from any minute now. But the smell of blood, the terror in the restrained man's eyes, the cold, calculating gleam in Sarah's gaze, it was all too real. "Sarah," I pleaded, my voice hoarse with fear. "It's too late for that," she whispered, her voice devoid of emotion. Adrenaline surged through my veins, a primal scream trapped in my throat. Sarah, her face a mask of chilling detachment, advanced, the scalpel gleaming under the flickering gaslight. No! The word ripped from my throat, a desperate plea lost in the suffocating confines of the basement. There had to be a way out, a way to escape this nightmare. "Sarah, please," I cried out, my voice echoing in the confined space. "You don't understand. We can still fix this." Her eyes, those cold, calculating eyes, flickered with something akin to amusement. "Fix it?" she repeated, her voice dripping with scorn. "You think this is something that can be fixed?" She took another step towards me, her shadow stretching across the floor like a living thing. But in that moment, a distraction. A low moan filled with pain came from the man on the table. He thrashed against his restraints, his eyes wide with terror as he caught my gaze. Sarah's head snapped towards the source of the noise, her attention momentarily diverted. It was a small window, a fleeting opportunity. But in this nightmare, even a sliver of hope was enough to cling to. I scrambled to my feet, adrenaline lending me a burst of strength I didn't know I possessed. My heart was pounding and my mind was racing with a singular focus: survival. Sarah, realizing my intent, whirled around, her expression a mask of fury. Her eyes burned with a rage I had never seen before. "Don't even think about it," she snarled, her voice raw with anger. The intensity in her voice sent chills down my spine, but it was too late. The decision had already been made in the depths of my mind. I was already moving, my body propelled by a primal need to escape. Every muscle in my body screamed for me to run faster. I dodged past her, my shoulder connecting with her arm, sending the scalpel clattering across the floor. The sound echoed ominously. She cried out, more in anger than pain, but I didn't look back. Her voice was a distant roar in my ears. I didn't know the layout of the house, but instinct took over. My feet seemed to find their own path through the maze of rooms. I ran blindly, my lungs burning, my heart pounding against my ribs. Each breath felt like fire in my chest. Doors flew open, revealing glimpses of opulent rooms, each one adding to the surreal, nightmarish quality of my flight. The grandeur felt mocking, but behind me, always behind me, came the sound of pursuit. The relentless footsteps were a constant reminder of the danger. Footsteps, heavy and relentless, echoing through the labyrinthine corridors. They seemed to grow louder with each passing second. I didn't dare slow down, didn't dare look back. Fear was my only companion. The only thought that consumed me was escape. Every fiber of my being was focused on getting away. Escape from this house of horrors. The walls seemed to close in on me, suffocating my resolve. Escape from the woman I loved, who was no longer the woman I knew. The realization was a dagger to my heart, but I couldn't afford to dwell on it. My lungs burned, each breath a searing pain in my chest. The blood pounding in my ears drowned out the echoes of my pursuer, but I didn't dare slow down. Not yet. Not while I could still hear the heavy thud of footsteps, each one a reminder of the horrors I was fleeing. I burst through a doorway, finding myself in a library. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined the walls, crammed with leather-bound volumes that whispered of forgotten knowledge. A fire crackled in the hearth, casting flickering shadows that danced across the worn Persian rug. For a fleeting moment, the normalcy of it all was disarming. Had I imagined the whole thing? The basement, the scalpel, the look in Sarah's eyes? No. The coppery tang of blood still lingered in my nostrils, a stark reminder of the reality I couldn't outrun. This haven of old books and crackling fire offered no sanctuary, only a temporary reprieve. I risked a glance back. The hallway was empty. The only sound, the frantic beating of my own heart. Silence. Had I lost them, or were they lying in wait, enjoying the chase? The thought sent a fresh wave of terror washing over me. I stumbled towards a window, its glass frosted with age. Moonlight filtered through the grime, illuminating dust motes dancing in the still air. I fumbled with the latch, my fingers trembling, but it wouldn't budge, nailed shut, of course. Panic welled up again, threatening to consume me. I was trapped in this house of horrors, a labyrinth designed to confine its prey. But giving up wasn't an option. Not while there was still a flicker of fight left in me. Turning from the useless window, I scanned the room, my eyes darting from one shadowed corner to the next. The darkness seemed to close in, suffocating and oppressive. There had to be another way out, a hidden passage, a secret door, anything that could offer a glimmer of hope. A floorboard creaked behind me, breaking the silence. I whirled around, my heart leaping into my throat, fear gripping me tightly. Standing in the doorway, framed by the flickering light from the hallway, was Sarah's father, his presence menacing. A cruel smile played on his lips, his eyes gleaming with a predatory hunger that mirrored his daughter's. It was a look that promised no mercy. "Running out of steam, are we?" he asked, his voice a low growl that reverberated through the room, sending chills down my spine. He took a step closer, his shadow stretching across the floor like a living thing creeping towards me. "It's no use running," he continued, his voice laced with a chilling amusement that made my blood run cold. "You're already part of the family," he declared, his words echoing in the room. His words sent a shiver down my spine, a cold realization settling in. He was right. I was already part of their twisted family, whether I liked it or not. The walls seemed to close in on me, but I wasn't ready to be the main course. I had to find a way to fight back, to escape this nightmare. Fear, primal and all-consuming, threatened to paralyze me, but something deep within me, a spark of defiance, refused to be extinguished. I lunged for a heavy bookend, its brass gleaming under the dim light. "Stay back!" I shouted, my voice hoarse with terror and adrenaline. Sarah's father paused, his smile widening. He wasn't afraid, not in the slightest. He saw my fear, my desperation, and it fueled his amusement. "You think you can stop us?" he chuckled, shaking his head slowly. "You're nothing but prey, and tonight we feast." He advanced, his movements slow, deliberate, like a predator toying with its prey. The bookend felt heavy in my hand, a meager weapon against the menace radiating from him, but it was something, a shield against the inevitable. "You were warned," he said, his voice low, guttural. "Sarah tried to tell you, but you wouldn't listen." He shook his head, a grotesque parody of sadness twisting his features. "Now it's too late." The fire crackled in the hearth, casting dancing shadows that stretched and contorted, mirroring the dread twisting in my gut. The scent of old books and wood smoke was overpowered by the metallic tang of blood, a constant reminder of the horror that awaited me. He lunged. I swung the bookend with all my might, a desperate prayer escaping my lips. The heavy brass connected with his shoulder, a sickening thud echoing in the sudden silence. He staggered back, a grunt escaping his lips, but he didn't fall. Surprise flickered across his face, quickly replaced by a cold fury that chilled me to the bone. He clutched his shoulder, his fingers stained crimson, my blood. But the wound, though deep, wasn't enough. It wouldn't stop him, not for long. I didn't hesitate. This was my chance, my one shot at escape. Turning from the momentarily stunned figure, I bolted towards the hallway, adrenaline propelling me forward. I didn't know where I was going, but any direction was better than facing the horrors that awaited me in that room. The hallway stretched before me, a seemingly endless tunnel illuminated by flickering gaslight. I could hear him behind me, his footsteps heavy, determined. But I couldn't give up, not now, not when freedom, however elusive, beckoned. I burst through a set of double doors, stumbling into a grand dining room, my heart pounding in my chest. The long mahogany table was set for a feast, the silverware gleaming under the light of a crystal chandelier, casting intricate patterns on the walls. But the aroma that filled the air wasn't of roasted turkey or pumpkin pie, as one might expect in such a setting. It was the metallic scent of blood, heavy, cloying, suffocating, making it hard to breathe. And at the head of the table, a figure sat shrouded in shadow, an ominous presence that sent chills down my spine, a figure I knew all too well, Sarah. Her presence was unmistakable. She rose as I entered, a slow, predatory smile spreading across her lips, her eyes glinting with a sinister light. In her hands she held a silver platter polished to a mirror-like shine. On it, nestled amongst the white linen, lay a human heart, my heart. The sight was both surreal and horrifying. "Welcome home, darling," she said, her voice a chilling whisper that echoed in the vast emptiness of the room. "Dinner is served." The last thing I saw, before darkness swallowed me whole, was the flicker of triumph in her eyes, a look of victory that haunted me. The hunter had caught her prey and there was no escape. And tonight the feast would be mine, a dark and twisted celebration of her triumph.